What's up, Wave Riders? I'm Peter from Waves and Games, and you're watching Chris, the old-ass retro gamer. Don't tell my mom I said ass.
Well, looks like I'm having tech issues again. Fuck you, computer. I'll be right back, everybody.
What's up, Wave Riders? I'm Peter from Waves and Games, and you're watching Chris, the old-ass retro gamer. Don't tell my mom I said ass.
Hey everybody, Chris, the old-ass retro gamer here. I hope this is working now. Apparently, I was trying to do something different tonight. Let me know if this is working. There's now a music feature during streaming through StreamYards, and I'm trying it out, and I was uploading some music while the "we'll be starting soon" thing was happening, and apparently that just completely crashed my computer. So let me know if you can hear the music, if it's overpowering me. Is it loud enough? Can you actually hear it? You know, whatever. Hey, Game Room. Hey, Tiger Shot. How's it going? So tonight, no music playing. Sweet. So tonight is the first of 3 parts talking about my Sega Genesis or Sega Mega Drive collection for my Video Game Collection 2022 live stream series. Awesome. Glad it's working. Yeah, I have so much stuff here on this shelving unit. I had to break it up into 3 parts. Tonight will probably be the shortest of the 3 because of the way my shelving unit is set up. The way I have them organized, this one had the least amount of games on it because it's the last shelf, or the first shelf of Genesis games is actually sharing with the end of my Master System games. So it's like a half and half thing going on, but whatever. So welcome everybody. I'm glad you're here. Let's get started since I'm getting started late because of all this BS with my computer. But I do have to do one thing first. I forgot to talk about a game last week during the Game Boy stream. It's a strange sized box, and I had set it aside while I was bringing all the regular sized boxed Game Boy games over to my little table over here, and I forgot to bring this oversized one over with me. And when I was putting the games back after I was finished with the stream last week, I was like, oh, damn it, I forgot to talk about that one. So I'm just going to talk about it now, get it out of the way. That was F1 Race, and this is the version that comes with the 4-player adapter with it. Yeah, this box is huge, and it comes with, you know, the game and the case, and inside you have that 4-player adapter. Everybody needs one of these cables to plug in so we can connect 4 Game Boys together so we can all play this crappy port of an old Famicom Disk System game that I actually have. I have F1 Race. It's a Famicom Grand Prix on the Famicom Disk System, and it's not a great game. And this game is not great either. If I can actually get this back in the damn box. Get in there. Get in there, damn it. Get in there. There we go. And you can see on the back, it's just a very simple behind the race car F1 type game, kind of like pole position, except this one's multiplayer. Sorry, I forgot to talk about that one last week, but like I said, I neglected to bring it over with the rest of the regular games. How's it going, Mondane? How's it going? Welcome. So when it comes to the Sega Genesis, when it came out not too long after the Game Boy. I was more interested in the Genesis than the Game Boy. They came out like maybe 5 months apart here in the US. Like when I was talking about the Game Boy last week, like the Game Boy was not even on my radar. It wasn't on my brother's radar. None of my friends cared about it. It wasn't until like that Christmas of '89 when it was released when everybody went nuts for it because like I said, nobody cared until everyone got it for Christmas that year, which is what happened to us. But I was already interested in the Genesis because it had a port of Altered Beast, and I do believe that was the pack-in game that came with it originally, and I loved Altered Beast in the arcade, so I was like, I want that console, but we had just gotten, now that I'm remembering things a little more clearly, we had just gotten our NES the year before. You know, we were getting Game Boys that Christmas, so like one Christmas we get NES, next Christmas we get the Game Boy. My parents were not going to buy another console for either myself or my brother, so it was out of the question. So the only thing I could possibly do is maybe save up money and get my own, but that was a long shot because this thing was like $200 or something. But don't underestimate the power of a little kid, because when it came to my brother, if I were to be like, hey, for my birthday this year, I would really like a Sega Genesis, Mom and Dad. If you could get me a Sega Genesis, that would be great. And they'd be like, no, you're good. My brother asks for it for his birthday. Here you go. So, like, the NES all of a sudden was mine, and the Genesis, and my brother asked for a Genesis for his birthday the year after we got our. So this was probably 91. So this was right before I got my my Super Nintendo that I bought for myself. So I think it was in retaliation for me saying that I was going to buy a Super Nintendo, so I was going to have my own console that I was buying with my own money. And my brother was like, I want my own too. Mom and Dad, I want a Genesis. So here you go. But then again, I have to go and get a job to get a Super Nintendo. And the Nintendo became mine from that point on as well. I ended up getting rid of it not too long after getting my Super Nintendo because nobody in my little friends group cared about the NES once the Super Nintendo was around. But when my brother got his Genesis, didn't stop me from buying games for it. I was working at a Kmart, my local Kmart, so I can get my Super Nintendo. And even though I had a Super Nintendo on layaway, my weekly paychecks that were coming in, I would run across the street because the Kmart I worked at, they had Genesis games, but they didn't get a lot of them for some reason. We had a lot of Game Boy, we had a lot of NES, we had a lot of Super Nintendo. But when it came to the Genesis, we only had like early games for it, and they were still full price. So I don't know what was going on there. So when it came to the Genesis games that I was buying for my brother's console, I'd never really bought them at Kmart. I actually went across the street on my lunch breaks to this like record store called Rockin' Records. They're like an indie mom and pop place. They rented videotapes too, but that was like our rental store for a little while in like the late 80s, early 90s. And they had Genesis games in there that they were selling, and those were discounted. So I went over there and I ran over like on my lunch break one day and I bought Revenge of Shinobi. The next week I bought Forgotten Worlds, and I think maybe two other games. I don't remember exactly which ones they were, but that was where we were getting most of our games from because my brother got the console with the Altered Beast, and I was the one buying all the other games that we were playing. I liked it. When I eventually did get my Super Nintendo out of layaway and brought it home, I was like, forget that thing that has music that sounds like somebody's running a spoon over a xylophone. What's up, Jacob? How's it going? My Super Nintendo, that's where it's at. This is the future of gaming right here. But over the years, I did grow to appreciate the Genesis. Eventually, my brother lost interest and realized it was kind of funny the way he whined about wanting a Genesis. And then, like, less than a year after getting it, realizing that he really wasn't that much of a gamer, kind of made me laugh. And then the Genesis ended up just becoming mine. So in the bedroom, my bedroom, I had a Super Nintendo, a Game Boy, a Nintendo, and a Genesis all hooked up to one TV. It was the weirdest thing. And then we ended up getting a Sega CD, or I ended up getting a Sega CD and all that. It was nuts. I do not currently own a Model 1 or Model 2 or a Model 3 Genesis. What I own right now is the CDX, which is the combo of the Sega Genesis and the Sega CD in one, and it looks like a compact disc player. I wanted one of these back in the day, but they were so freaking hard to find, and they were pretty expensive too. I ended up getting this off of eBay when I got back into collecting. It wasn't as expensive as I saw other sellers, putting it up for sale for. The only problem was the plug back here. It works just fine. It's just the plug back here is a little finicky. If you bump the system or you don't have it sitting in the right spot, like if the plug, like the socket, if it moves a little bit, it'll turn off. So I kind of have to like find the sweet spot and then like put something up against the cable in order to make it not move anymore and keep it stationary so I can play it. Most of the time, I just use my Retro Freak for my Genesis games. When I want to play a Sega CD game, I have to bust this out, which is one of the reasons why I can't wait for my damn Polymega to show up so I can actually play them in HD. But it still works. It's pretty fantastic. And I also have the 6-button controller, which surprisingly does not work on my Retro Freak. I don't understand it at all. Every time I plug this in, the system doesn't even want to recognize it. I plug in a 3-button controller and it's just fine. Yeah, the one that I had. So my brother got the Model 1 back in the day when he whined about it and ended up getting one for my parents. He got a Model 1. But when the Model 2 came out, we got them in at the Kmart I was working at. And I did not like the Model 1 because I had space concerns. The Model 1 was really long, like wide, it took up a lot of space. And I was like in my bedroom. I didn't have a whole lot of space to work with. I had a Nintendo, a Super Nintendo, and a Genesis all hooked up to one TV. I only had so much space to work with. So I ended up trading in my brother's Model 1, and I got a Model 2 in exchange, and I think I had to pay maybe $50 on top of it. And that thing was nice, especially when I got the Sega CD add-on and it made the thing even wider. I did not need this gigantic freaking console sitting on my counter. So yeah, I ended up trading it in for a Model 2. Model 2 is my preferred version of the Genesis. When I got back into collecting in 2013, I bought a Model 2 straight up. But when I got the Sega CD, I got rid of it. When I got the CDX, I got rid of it. Do I have any like accessories or anything like that? I don't have anything crazy. I don't have a Menacer or what is it called? The activator, that stupid motion controlled thing for Eternal Champions. No, I don't have that. The only accessory I have is the Mega Mouse, and it's still sealed. I found this at a Half Price Books, and it was like $10. And I was like, still sealed? Yeah, I'll take that. And it comes with a mouse pad and everything. I'm not sure what games actually use this, but it's a thing. It doesn't say anything. It just says precision control and total accuracy. Puzzle action adventures. It makes it more exciting. It makes art and print. Maybe the Art's Alive game this would work better with, but I don't know. I've never actually opened it because I don't have any games that I can think to use it for. I don't even know if my Retro Freak would actually recognize that either. So there's that. But now let's get into the games. It's 20 minutes already. Actually, 10 minutes of probably talking. Let me get a little drink here before I start. So we've got one of the more expensive games in my collection for the Genesis. That is Three Ninjas Kick Back. This is based on in my opinion, pretty crappy movie. I didn't like any of the Three Ninja movies. I saw the first two, so I saw Three Ninjas, and then I saw Three Ninjas Kick Back, and then there's Three Ninjas Go to Thunder Mountain or something like that. I gave up after a while. They always had different kids playing the three main characters, and it was just not good. But the reason I wanted this is, yeah, it's a licensed game. Sure, of course, it's me we're talking about. I love licensed stuff. But my thing was, it's by Psygnosis. And I was trying to get all the Psygnosis games for a little period of time. And this was one of the more expensive ones. It's even more expensive, I think, on the Super Nintendo. But the one that I went after was the Genesis one. And it's a side-scrolling platformer beat-em-up, and it's not good. It's just... There's a thing that happens with like these Psygnosis games. It's like they feel more like they would be great on an Amiga, but for a home console like this, they just kind of don't work. Like usually the characters either move too fast, or they jump too high, or the jumping is weird, or the characters slide all around like in an ocean game. This is just one of those that just, as far as I'm concerned, does not really work. This also got a port over to the Sega CD. I mean, if I really want to be a completionist for Psygnosis, I'll probably get the Super Nintendo and the Sega CD one at some point. I'm not probably going to like it, but, whatevs. Not my favorite. This is a reproduction. So, what year was that? Probably 2016, I want to say. The first year my job handed out a yearly bonus. I want to say it was 2016. And it was big. And I didn't really have any plans for it. So I was like, maybe I'll put money down on a new car. Maybe I'll get my car fixed up, because my car was not in the greatest shape. No, I was like, oh, I discovered this thing called Etsy. Let's go and buy all the reproductions I can possibly afford. That's what happened. So I found this one place called, I think it was the Retro Arcade. I think it was the Retro Arcade or something like that. It had arcade in the title. And they had the best looking repros out of all the other places that I had found. I'd found one place previous, and I don't know if I'll talk about any of their stuff tonight. It might be in one of the next ones. The first place that I bought repros for the Genesis from on Etsy was a shambles. It was a joke. But the second place I went to, which was this, I can't remember what it was called, the something arcade. They're not even on Etsy anymore. They had like tons and tons of stuff, and it all looked great. It all came with full color manual, the case with full color artwork, and a cartridge that looked like the real deal with a really good label. And they all played on my Retro Freak, which was fantastic because not a lot of repros or homebrews want to play on that console. But the first one I have to talk about from that arcade, I think it was Retro Arcade, was Advanced Buster Hawk Glay Lancer, which is a vertically scrolling shmup. And a very good one at that. The only thing was, I think when they printed out the artwork, the page was a little folded when it went through the printer, and you kind of got this like line going through it right here, but it's okay. I don't give a shit. This was the first one I booted up when I got that big lot. I bought like 10 games from them at once. And I absolutely love this game. It has great effects, great music. The play control is fun. The way the game plays is kind of neat. If I remember correctly, because I haven't played this in a long time. If I remember correctly, it's kind of like R-Type, where you have like an option that kind of hovers in front of your characters, or they're on the sides of your ship or something like that, and you can like fire them. Yeah, I think you fire them, and they bounce around the screen. And then they'll come back and rest on your ship. I think it was like, well, there's one on top and one on the bottom, and you can fire them as like an extra weapon. Do I have Android Assault? Ooh, it's been a while, Neo Genesis. Ooh. How's it going? And I absolutely love it. Like I said, everything about it is fantastic. If you do not have a copy of this, I highly recommend either getting it straight from Japan. I don't think you really need to know Japanese to play this game. But if you can find a repro, it's fantastic. I highly recommend it. It is awesome. And I kept on ordering from that arcade place because of that. Next up is The Adventures of Batman and Robin. I got this off of Facebook from, I do believe, my buddy Felix the Brett. He sent me a picture of a bunch of like doubles that he had gotten from some big pickup. He's always getting these big ass pickups. He like weekly he texts me, look, another crazy day, and he sends me this pickup of like 500 things he got. And I picked up a bunch of stuff from him at once, and I do believe this was one of them. And I'd wanted this game for the longest time. I'm a huge Batman fan to begin with, and the thing about this was it does not look like a Genesis game. The way the graphics work in it, it looks more like a Super Nintendo game. What's up, Captain Algebra? There are levels in this game that look like they use mode 7, and I do not think that Genesis games are able to do stuff like that. And then you start playing stuff like Contra Hardcore and Gunstar Heroes and games like that, and you're like, oh, Genesis can do pretty cool things when the programmers get creative. And this game is just like that. It's been a long day, guys. And I did have dinner, but I think I got the itis. I am so tired. Do them all in one stream. Hail to the no. But yeah, I picked this up and I played it for, I want to say, a good hour and a half, 2 hours. I didn't beat it, but I loved every minute of it. It's a side-scrolling beat-em-up with some platforming stuff. There's some vehicle levels as well. It's absolutely fantastic. I do not know if this actually came in a plastic case or not, but I usually only see it with the cardboard case. And this is feeling really light. Yeah, everything's in here. Yep, cart. Yeah, the manual. Where are you, manual? Where are you, manual? There is no manual! Oh, that's why I got it cheap from Felix. It didn't have the manual. Derp. So now I know what to look for. Cap, remember, next time we go to a convention, manual for Adventures of Batman and Robin on the Genesis. I need to write down the ones that I need. Great game. And it's expensive for some reason. So is the Super Nintendo one. The Super Nintendo one, holy crap. Genesis games? Let me check my handy-dandy app right now. For the Genesis, I have 197. I'm not going for a complete collection like you, bruh, but I have a good amount. Classic, one of the first generation Genesis games. We have Afterburner 2. This is a port of the arcade game, which I played the shit out of when it was relevant. Behind the plane dogfight game, and it's pretty awesome. The Genesis version is pretty decent. It doesn't quite, like I said, it can't do Mode 7 like the Super Nintendo could, so there had to be some concessions to make it run properly on the console, and some of the animations are pretty choppy. But for what it is, I mean, like I said, first generation Genesis game, it's pretty cool. Could have been better, but, you know, I'm not complaining because it does still feel like Afterburner. Absolute classic. Everybody had a copy of this when I was a kid. And that is Aladdin. Side-scrolling platformer. Holy crap. Animation is fantastic. If I remember correctly, Disney actually did the animation, like hand animation for the game, and then Virgin released it for them because they didn't really have a market, I guess, or they didn't really have like a video game publication company or something like that back then. So other companies would just license the games from them. So yeah, absolutely fantastic. Not my favorite game based on Aladdin, but it's still pretty awesome. And I've never actually beaten this. Maybe I should try. I don't think I've ever gotten past the lava flow scene from the tomb. I think it's as far as I've ever gotten. Maybe I should sit down and give it a real go one of these days. But absolutely fantastic. And next up we have another first generation Genesis game, and that is Alex Kidd and the Enchanted Castle. Alex Kidd was like the poster boy for the Master System, and they tried to port him over to the Genesis and continue it. Did not take. This game, from what I understand, just bombed horribly over here. Nobody gave a crap. But it's another platformer kind of trying to be like Mario. And then Sonic ended up coming along and whooping Alex Kidd's ass, and Alex Kidd disappeared from history. I think he was pretty popular in the UK, but over here nobody gave a crap. But I do believe I grabbed this at Freak Toys last year when I went with It's Rocket Sauce to Wisconsin. We went game hunting on my birthday around Wisconsin, and I picked this up. But not sad that I have it. I mean, I want all the Alex Kidd games because it is a part of Sega history. Add it to my backlog roulette. I think it actually is already on my backlog roulette. I just have never actually rolled it yet. And I talked about this one. This is one of my all-time favorite Genesis games. I talked about this in, well, plenty of videos on my channel already, but when I did the 31 days of licensed games on at the beginning of the year in January, I got to the one about a video game based off of a 90s movie. This was my pick for best game for that topic. That is Alien 3. So the movie that this is based on does not get any love. I absolutely love the movie. I think it's my second favorite Alien movie of the original 4. I prefer this to the original Alien because I like, you know, the themes. But the game itself is pretty freaking awesome. It has amazing music. Is the music still playing? I don't know if the rock, paper, scissors thing is actually in this one. I know it's in the one of the Master System ones. Let me change the music to something else. Now we're talking about Alien 3. How's that? So, yeah, it's a side-scrolling platformer / run and gun where you're playing as Ripley and you're running around the prison planet from the film. Only thing is, and I talked about this, I think, during the NES stream, that the big thing about the movie was it was Ripley crashes on a prison planet filled with, like, rapists and criminals and murderers and all this kind of stuff. She's got an alien queen in her stomach, there's one alien running around the planet, and there are no weapons on this planet. It's a prison. So there's no weapons at all. They're always using, like, torches and stuff as weapons. So what do you do when you license the movie to turn into a video game? How do you turn that into a game that's not called Alien Isolation? You forget every rule of the movie set up and just do your own thing. So it still takes place in the prison. They're still prisoners. They're all cocooned, and you have to rescue them. That's the big thing of the game, is you got to rescue all the prisoners throughout each stage. There's a time limit. Clear 3 stages, fight a boss, go to the next section of stages, the next 3 stages. But there's aliens everywhere. There's millions of aliens loose on the planet, and you start off with a machine gun, a flamethrower, a rocket launcher, and grenades. Because video games. So, I have to go back to the comments. Beat it a couple years ago. It is tough as hell. It does get very, very hard. But I love the music in it. I love the graphics. I love the play control. I love everything about it. The day I bought this, remember I was still working at Kmart when I bought this. I drove to the local mall on my lunch break, which is like a half an hour. So you best believe I was driving like 80 miles an hour down suburban streets to get to the mall, buy this game, and get back before my time was up. I went there, bought this game, brought it back to work, left it in the car, obviously, brought it home, and I played this all night. And I was like, this was one of the best games I've bought for the Genesis so far. Like, I absolutely loved it. And I still do. I still think it's a fantastic game. Sure, the Super Nintendo one, I think, is better just by the way it's set up with, like, the missions instead of it just being the same thing every single stage like it is here. But I absolutely love this game. It is very underrated. I think everybody needs to try it at least once. Give it a shot. Here's another repro I got from that retro arcade Etsy shop that I bought all those games from back in like 2016 or whatever it was. And it's Alien Soldier. And I needed to get this game because it's developed by Treasure, which is one of my favorite game developers. They did Gunstar Heroes, Sylphied, a lot of stuff. I love the way they do their games. It's like they're very creative. And this does follow a little bit of what... Excuse me, I've got a burp brewing right now. It does have a very Gunstar Heroes type feel because your character is like this alien bird dude. And you have like 4 weapons to choose from, just kind of like in Gunstar Heroes, where you have like 4 different types of weapons and you can kind of combine them to make them do different things. Here you have 4 that you have to choose from. They each have their own ammo. Once you run out, you can switch to a different one. You can find more ammo, but it's essentially a boss rush. You have like a really short stage to run through, and then you fight a boss, and they have a weird pattern. You got to figure out the pattern, beat the boss, go to the next stage. Real short, get to the boss battle. It's like all boss battles. It's really cool. The graphics are great. It controls really well. It is just hard as balls. This was my... It's not my current backlog roulette game. It was my previous episode of the Super Enabler Brothers podcast's backlog roulette game that I got. And I tried to play it for at least an hour, and I was like, I'm getting nowhere in this game. I love it. Don't get me wrong. I love it. It's just so hard. I was like, I probably need to play this game like every day for a year in order to get anywhere in this game, in order to beat it. This is not like, oh, I'm going to beat this over the weekend type of a thing. No, this requires dedication, and I was not feeling it when I was playing it. But it is fantastic. It looks and plays great. I love it. I think it's also on the Sega Genesis Mini or whatever it is, or Retro or Classic or whatever it's called. It's one of the games that's built into it. Alien Soldier is good, yeah. Another Alien game, we've got Alien Storm. I do believe this is another first-generation Genesis game, and this is based off of another arcade game, which is a clone of one of the... It's a game by Sega, and it's a clone of another Sega game. This is basically Golden Axe, and it's a sci-fi version. So instead of you being like a barbarian, a Valkyrie, and a dwarf, and you've got axes and swords and whatnot, now you're playing as like alien hunters with guns and stuff, and it's the exact same game as Golden Axe. Except I do believe this has like a shooter level. I think it's an area where you have like you can control a reticle, and there's like aliens jumping at you, and you have to like shoot at them and all that kind of stuff. It's fun. I like it a lot. It's super. This is one of the only games like this that I've actually beaten. I played the crap out of this on this. What is it? The Sonic's Genesis Classics collection or whatever that came out for the 360 and the PS3. It's a lot of fun. I beat it, and I unlocked the I think I unlocked the arcade game by beating the Genesis game. But it's a lot of fun. I like it a lot. One of the first games, well, yeah, it starts in EA's, so that absolutely makes sense. This was the game I was like, I needed to have a Genesis so I could play this game. And then when my brother got it, I was like, oh! Altered Beast. I played this arcade game so much back in the day. You have no clue. There was, I've talked about it a couple times already in these streams. There was a resort that we went to every summer when I was like in junior high and I think my freshman year of high school, called Sunnybrook Farm, and it was in Michigan. And it was like cabins. It was a pit. But my parents loved it because they could get drunk every night and not have to worry about driving home, because like they served you dinner, they served you lunch, they served you breakfast. They did things with the kids. They would take you into town and all that kind of stuff. I hated it. I hated all the kids that were there. But they did have an arcade. They didn't have a whole lot of games in the arcade. They had like one pinball game. They had a jukebox, and everyone would always play over and over this song by, I think it was not BB King, the guitarist, not BB King, the other guitarist, the one who sang Johnny Be Good. I cannot remember the dude's name. He had a song called My Ding-a-Ling. And we would play that song over and over and over on the jukebox. But they had Rolling Thunder arcade, they had Arch Rivals arcade, and they had Altered Beast arcade. And I played the shit out of this instead of doing everything else there that was like planned. I was like, screw you, I'm playing Altered Beast. It's just a side-scrolling beat-em up. The cool thing is your character gets powered up to the point where every stage he turns into like a different monster. First stage is a werewolf, second stage he's a dragon, the third stage he's a bear, I think. It's absolutely fantastic. I love it so much. And the Genesis game is just fine. It's way better than the TurboGrafx version that we got. But yeah, absolute classic. Had to have it. Chuck Berry, that's him. Yep, Chuck Berry, My Ding-a-Ling. Look it up. It is a song about his dick. And we all were like obviously we're a bunch of immature kids. We're like, hey, he's singing a song about his wiener. Next up, I got this in a lot when I first got back into collecting in 2015, and that's Animaniacs. I was not a fan of this cartoon when it was a thing back in, the mid-90s. A lot of my friends were. My friend Charlie was like obsessed with this cartoon. He would like run around and sing the songs. He worked at a competing video store down the street from where I worked. And like I remember I went in there one night I was waiting for him to get off work so we could go and hang out afterwards. And he was like running around the store dancing and singing the songs and shit. I was just like, bitch, you crazy. But it's a side-scrolling platformer, and it's pretty fun. There's a Super Nintendo version also, and I think they're similar but not exactly the same. So you can show up later. I was late too, dude. My computer crashed the moment I started the stream. So I didn't start for like the first 10 minutes of this video. If you go back, oh, there we go again. Son of a bitch. F this computer, man. F it. I don't think it likes playing the music. I'll be right back, guys. Son of a bitch. Fuck this.
What's up, Wave Riders? I'm Peter from Waves and Games, and you're watching Chris, the old-ass retro gamer. Don't tell my mom I said ass.
Let's try this again. I don't know what's going on with my computer. I think playing the music... Yeah, that's the third time I've played it, Peter. Every time I start the stream back up, I always play it because that one... You gave me two of those intros, and that one that you did where you're like, don't tell my mom it's that ass, makes me laugh every time I see it, so I had to play it again. The GoFundMe. Huh. Yeah, my computer's going crazy. I think playing the music is actually crashing it. I'll try it again. See how that works. It doesn't look like it's... I don't need to reboot the computer completely. But yeah, I was talking about Animaniacs. Yeah, it's okay. It's fun. The Genesis and the Super Nintendo games are similar, but a little bit different also. But you can switch between the three main characters. I don't know what their names are, but it's okay. It's fine. It's okay, I guess. It's neat. No, this is a Escape from New York shirt. It says, "Call me Snake." I was talking about having that Arch Rivals arcade game at that resort that we used to go to, and here it is. This came in a lot when I got back into collecting, and because of playing that arcade game at the resort all the time, I figured I should just keep it. It's also available, I think, on the Nintendo, but the Genesis one is fine. And it's kind of like the precursor to NBA Jam. It's like 2-on-2. If I remember correctly, it's 2-on-2. And you, instead of like the pushing that you can do in NBA Jam, you can like punch people in this one. You can actually have fights, but you don't have the crazy dunks or anything like that. But it's okay. It's all right. They're the Warner Brothers, and they're a Warner sister dot. I guess. I picked this up because of, what was it? Cygnus Destroyer, I think his name used to be. I used to watch his channel all the time. He was pretty cool. And I think he was really good friends with Michael B. the Game Genie. And he did like a Genesis games that no one knows about. And one of the ones he talked about was Asterix and the Great Rescue. This is actually like a Sega game. Sega licensed this property, which I do believe is really popular in France. Not over here so much. I think they even made a movie. An animated movie with this character in it, and like it came out over here and nobody gave a shit because nobody knows what Asterix is. Asterix and his big brother Obelix. Obelix? I think Obelix? Yeah, Obelix. And it's a side-scrolling platformer, and I actually put this in my Sega Genesis not hidden gems. I almost said hidden. Oh, don't know. Diamonds in the Rough video, because this game is actually really fun. It's really clever and cute, and really easy to just pick up and play. It's a platformer. You play as either Asterix or Obelix, and it's your typical platformer stuff, but it's done really, really well, so I had to pick that up. But they break loose, and now you know the plot. Oh no! Spoilers! He's singing the song. The guy from Talking Dead. That's cool. Here is Batman, another licensed game. This is what I thought originally was a port of the NES game to the Genesis when I first picked it up back in the day. And I was disappointed because the pictures on the back are pictures from the NES game, which is some bullshit. False advertising, motherfuckers. So when I picked this up, I do believe at a Funko-Land, and brought it home, and I was like, what the hell is this? This is nothing like the Nintendo game. I thought this was like going to be like this upgraded port. No, this one is more of a beat-em-up than like you shooting things like in the Nintendo game, using like the batarangs and all that. This is like a straight-up fist-fight beat-em-up. And it's okay. Why am I showing you the back? The pictures don't even do the game justice. The graphics are pretty cool. I'm just not the biggest fan of this version of this game. I would rather play the NES one. It just feels better made. This one just feels really kind of loosey-goosey and not all that fun, but I know some people like it a lot. I'm not one of them. I think Sunsoft, when it came to the Genesis, didn't really know what they were doing with the console, like how to program for it. Because a lot of the games that they made for the Genesis just I don't think work all that great. NES, they're fantastic. Genesis, I think they were like, no. There's a new game on modern platforms. Yeah, I've seen that too. I kind of think I want to pick it up. Here's another reproduction that I got from that Arcade Legacy or Retro Arcade, or whatever the fuck it was called. Battlemania 2 Troubleshooter Vintage. I think this is the Japanese version. Son of a bitch, doing it again. I guess I can't play this music. I'll be right back, guys. I gotta... Ugh, shit. I don't know what the hell this program is doing. We'll try this without the music and see what happens. Anyway, Battlemania 2. There is a game for the Genesis called Troubleshooter, and I do believe it's almost the exact same thing as this, although I think it was like either gimped or censored or something to make somebody feel that they needed to do a reproduction of the Japanese version of it. But this is it, and I don't know. Can't tell you. It is pretty fun. What it is a side-scrolling shmup that's kind of like Forgotten Worlds, where you play as these people who are like floating. So essentially, instead of having a spaceship on this horizontally scrolling shmup, you're a person and you're floating, and you can shoot in all these different directions. You can like turn your character, and they can just shoot all over the place. So maybe Forgotten Worlds copied this. Maybe this was a copy of Forgotten Worlds. I don't know. But it is super fun, and I like the characters and the cutscenes and everything about it. It plays very, very well. I like it a lot. I was super thrilled that when I got the repro in the mail and I played it, I was like, yes, another winner. So I probably won't be buying Troubleshooter here. Here's the one that I knew absolutely zilch about when I found this at my local retro store, Video Games Then and Now. They had it in their expensive game box, but it was only like $15 or whatever, so I picked it up. And it's called Battle Squadron. This was one of those Electronic Arts games that came in a cardboard box. I don't know what... Their boxes, like, changed faster than the weather and the seasons. It's cardboard boxes, then thin boxes, then really super fat boxes, then regular-sized boxes. I don't understand. I don't get it. But I do believe this was, like, a really early game that they did. We didn't get it? Okay, that could have been it. Yeah, this is a vertically scrolling shmup. You can see it in the one major picture with the green and blue guy. And it's okay. It's just very basic. It's not like Truxton was a very early game for the Genesis 2 when it came to shmups. And this is not as good as Truxton. Truxton, I think, is kind of hard to beat. But this one is not bad. But as for a game that I knew absolutely zilch about, when I saw it sitting there, I was like, yeah, I think I need to have that. Give it to me. Give it to me now. Yeah, if it freezes up again, I'm going to have to reboot the whole computer. So I guess the music thing is jacking everything up. Next up, we have Battletech. What is that? A game of armored combat. Battletech is like a tabletop RPG, but one that requires miniatures and stuff. You can actually play like an RPG tabletop version that doesn't have that, but everybody plays with the miniatures. I know a bunch of people who do. But this is a top-down isometric view shooter where you're in like a walking mech and you're just destroying enemies, and it's pretty cool. I like this one a lot. There's also one for the Super Nintendo. I don't think it's the same game as this. I don't have that. I don't think. Yeah, I do not think I own that one. But this is fantastic. I got this like dirt cheap when I first got back into collecting, so I was not going to pass it up. Plus, I like these types of games. I like Battletech. I like it as a license. I'm not willing to actually play the tabletop version. And then, because Rare is my favorite developer, when it comes to video games, I had to get their port of Battletoads to the Genesis. I absolutely... This is weird. So I picked this up in the Midwest Gaming Classic, I think in 2019? I think it was 2019. And I was really curious what this was like, because this is essentially the exact same thing as the Nintendo game. It is just an updated graphic port. And it looks great. And the music is essentially the same. It's just Genesisized. But the weird thing is, all the technical improvements made to this game, I think I still prefer the NES game over it. I think the NES game looks better because there's so much weird shading that they added to things in this that it makes things muddled looking, like they don't look as clear and crisp as they do on the Genesis game because of the limited color palette. You can tell exactly what you're looking at. Sometimes the characters blend into backgrounds because of the shading that they put and the shading on the backgrounds and all the different graphical effects they used. And it's just, I think it's harder to see things. It's hard. The music I don't think is nearly as good either. It plays exactly the same. But honestly, I prefer the Nintendo game to this. Sometimes simpler is better. And then that follows up with Battletoads and Double Dragon. The ultimate team in the ultimate game. Yeah! I need to try all the different versions of this game. There is the Genesis, there is a Super Nintendo, and there's an NES version. And I understand the NES one, I think, is the better of the three. If I remember correctly. But I've played this one quite a bit, and I like it a lot. And it is essentially exactly what it is. Take a typical take a Battletoads game and throw the Double Dragon characters into it, and obviously the Battletoads also. My throat is going absolutely nuts. My computer is going crazy, and my throat is going crazy. But it's super awesome. Great beat 'em up, great music, the shmup levels and everything. I absolutely love it. The Genesis version is much easier than the Super Nintendo, but I see the NES and Game Boy. You still need the NES. I hear the NES version is the best version. And Game Room. Yeah, Battletoads I prefer on the NES, and I do want to get this on the NES also. But then again, it's a rare game, so I'm probably going to get it for everything I know it's available for, because collector obsession. Then we have Beavis and Butthead, another licensed game. There is one for the Super Nintendo as well, but I was told by many, 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 many people that the Genesis version is the better game. And after playing it, I agree. It's still not great by any means. I mean, it is a game based on Beavis and Butthead. How good could it be? But I have watched videos of the Super Nintendo version, and I was like, the Genesis one looks way more playable. But it's a side-scrolling adventure game. It's not really a platformer. Couldn't really tell you what the plot was. It's been so long since I played this. I played it when I first got it to make sure it worked. And I haven't played it since. But it looks okay. It's pretty good. Yeah, like I said, I watched a video on the Super Nintendo version, because I got that, I do believe, from Felix the Brett also. And I got it for a really good price, so I wasn't going to pass it up even though I had never played it before. And then I was like, well, what if I want to get the Super Nintendo version? Which one is better? Because I'm thinking the way most games were back in the day, if they were available on the Genesis and the Super Nintendo, they were usually the exact same game, just some had better graphics and others had better music or whatever. No, they're completely different games, and I was glad that I looked, because I was like, I don't think I want that Super Nintendo. That Bart's Nightmare. It did not look fun. They need to find pieces of their tickets to go see Gwar. Yep, that's it. Here's another, I think, first generation Genesis game, and that's Biohazard Battle. Awesome shmup. I talk about this. Did I talk about this? I think I did talk about this in my Diamonds in the Rough for the Genesis, but it's a horizontally... Son of a bitch! Okay, guys, I have to reboot my computer again, because this is just getting ridiculous. Okay, Okay, I'm back. Computer is ticking me off. Whatever. Biohazard Battle. This is probably going to be one of my least watched streams because of all the downtime, because of the stupid computer crapping out. Anyway, horizontally scrolling shmup. You're fighting like alien creatures and stuff, and you have like 4 different ships you could choose from. Each of them has like different weapons, and they all power up a little bit differently from each other, and it's pretty fun. I like it a lot. It's not... There's another game I'm going to talk about later on for the Genesis, which is similar to this. That is a little basic compared to this, but this one is super fun. I like it a lot. Mile 2. Next up is, I got this recently. I got this in November when I went to Minneapolis to visit Church the Game Grinder and Cardboard Zero. Hung out with them for a weekend around Minneapolis, and they were taking me to different game shops, and one of the games they had at one of the stores, I was like, I've always wanted that game. Metal Jesus talked about it in one of his videos, and I've wanted it ever since I saw it there. But this place was asking like $150 for it or something, like some crazy number, and I was like, I am not paying that money for this game. And Church goes, I have it. And I was like, oh, okay. I'm like, well, what are you suggesting, that you don't want it? And he goes, do you have anything to trade? And I was like, well, you've been talking about wanting a backwards compatible PS3. Well, I happen to have a backwards compatible PS3 that I'm getting rid of. I'm like, you want to trade for that? And he goes, okay. So we traded, and he got my backwards compatible PS3, and I got Blades of Vengeance. It's a horizontally scrolling beat-em-up platformer that is very violent. EA was one of those companies that didn't seem to give a crap about like the rating thing. They're just kind of like, I don't give a crap. There's blood. Put blood in it. I don't give a shit. Oh, excuse me. You have two different characters to choose from, a male and a female character, and you're just going around beating people up, getting treasure. And I don't remember exactly what the plot is. I think you're going after like a wizard or something like that. But it's pretty rad. I was actually playing this like 2 weekends ago, and it's a little tough. I mean, some of the controls are not the greatest, so it was taking me a little while to get used to it. But I was thoroughly enjoying myself, and I do want to get further into it. No, is there 3 characters? I remember, because I kept on picking the woman, like the Valkyrie character from, like, Gauntlet. I kept on picking her to play as, because she's pretty quick. But I like it a lot, and yeah, it is ultra-violent. I like it a lot. I like it. Here's another early, I think, first-generation Genesis game. I picked this up when I was hanging out with Captain Algebra. I think it was when he came to visit last year. And that is Bonanza Brothers. I think this was before he decided to go for the complete set. And this reminds me a lot of Keystone Capers on the Atari 2600. It's like you're running through a mall. It's like a caper game. And you can see it looks a lot like Keystone Capers, where you've got, like, you're running through like a mall and you're just like stealing shit. That's me. I haven't spent a lot of time playing this. I played it just to make sure it worked when it showed up, but I need to put more time into it. It looks pretty fun. So, yeah. And I think it's very uncommon, which is why I picked it up. It's very uncommon to me. I have not seen that game in person unless I'm at a convention or something. But out in the wild, just when I'm just randomly going out looking for things, I don't see it. So because I found it at, I think it was the Exchange. Yeah, remember there were those Genesis games that showed up at the Exchange that one time, Cap? I was like, someone had just sold a whole shitload of them, and we just happened to go there after that person left or whatever it was. But I was like, I never see that game, so I'm going to pick it up. This one I need to put a lot of time into. I was watching Tesseract, who's a member of the Cartridge Club, stream this a while ago, and while it does look very complicated and very Ultima-esque, because it's an RPG, it's like an old school RPG, I really need to put some time into it. But we're talking Buck Rogers, Countdown to Doomsday. It's an RPG that has a very high learning curve, evidenced by this thick-ass manual that comes with it. I told you, man, you should have bought that shit when we were there. As I say, you're never going to find it for that price again. But you punked out. Just kidding. It was still kind of expensive, so I didn't blame you for not picking it up. But I love Buck Rogers as a license. Not the TV show from the 70s and 80s. I think that is a pile of dog shit. But just from the comic books and the radio shows and all that kind of stuff, I think it's pretty fantastic. So I was all over this. But this is one of those fat boxed Electronic Arts games, like all of those RPGs that they released from SSI like this, all came in this big ass box. But I was watching Tesseract play it, and I was like, Jesus, dude, like this is complicated, but it still looked fun. So I need to get into it. I picked this up not too long ago, also at Video Games Then and Now. It's Burning Forge. Is another game that I never, ever, ever see in person. So even though it did not have a manual, I picked it up because I never actually see it. So I was like, you know what? Because I'm probably never going to find this again. For the price that it was going for, I'm just going to pick it up so I can play it. And it's kind of like playing like Space Harrier, but you're on like a rocket sled, and if you look at it, it looks like Space Harrier. So it's essentially like an into the screen shmup, kind of like Star Fox, but obviously not Mode 7 polygon graphics. But I played it just to make sure it worked, and it was actually kind of fun. I remember I saw this in one of Brett Weiss's books. It's not a Genesis book. It's like the games that came out within like a bunch of years. It's like one of the games that was in there, and I was like, oh, I remember seeing that in the book, and it looked kind of cool. And when I found it at the store, I was like, just give it to me. I'm probably never going to see it again. And we were talking about this weekend, Cap. This past weekend, Captain Algebra, Rocket Sauce from the Cartridge Club, and TJ Kitsune, we all went out game hunting around Wisconsin again. And we were talking about Captain America and the Avengers. I can't move. Thank you, Quicksilver. This is a side-scrolling beat-em-up. There's a couple of levels where you're like flying, and it turns into like a shmup. But you have 4 players to choose from. You have Iron Man, Vision, Captain America, and Hawkeye, and you're beating the crap out of supervillains from the Marvel Universe. And it is a pretty fantastic game. I used to play this in the arcade all the time, especially at Great America. The Six Flags we have here in Illinois. I absolutely loved it. To the point where one day, where was I working when this happened? I think I was still working at the Kmart. I went to this mall after work, out of the way. It's like the biggest mall in like the Midwest, I guess. Well, I would consider the one in Minneapolis is probably bigger. But there's this mall called Woodfield. It's gigantic. They had an electronics boutique, and this just came out. It hadn't come out for the Genesis yet, but the Super Nintendo version came out by Mindscape. Should have known better. Mindscape. And I ran out like the day it came out, picked it up, brought it home, played it for 10 minutes, put it back in the box, brought it back to that EB Games, and exchanged it for a copy of Cool Spot on the Super Nintendo. Luckily, the EB Games had a policy that if you buy a game and you didn't like it within like 2 days of buying it, you could bring it back and exchange it for something else. And I ran back. I was like, Mom, I need the car again. I need to go do something. And I ran back to the mall. Go away. I ran back to the mall and returned it and got my copy of Cool Spot, which I liked a lot more. But it's a fantastic port of that arcade game. I cannot recommend this enough. It is the only one worth having. Trust me. Thank you, Wasp. The Genesis version is awesome. Avoid the Super Nintendo version like the plague. There's another licensed game, and that is Castle of Illusion starring Mickey Mouse. This is a fantastic platformer. So after oh my god, my throat is just going nuts. It's like I can't get words out. Ah. After the fiasco that was Fantasia on the Genesis, that shit show that was, I had zero expectations for this. I was just like, no, I'm not really interested. It's another Mickey Mouse game. It's going to suck as bad as Fantasia. Nope! This is the one to have. This is the one that brought the Disney games back to life on the Genesis. Didn't play it back in the day. I played it when I got back into collecting in the 90s. The late 90s, early 2000s. And it's a very simple side-scrolling platformer. You play as Mickey Mouse. You have like apples you can throw as weapons. But it's very simple, very cutesy, and it's a lot of fun. Thing is, there is a downgraded port of this for the Master System, which I do own, that only came out in the UK, and I actually think that version is better than this because it got simplified from this and basically just distilled it into like the best parts of this. But this is a fantastic game. I absolutely love it. How long did this take me? Well, I've been collecting I've been collecting since 2014, I think. No, 2013. At the end of 2013. That was when I got back. I don't have a whole lot, but I only have so much space. But next up is Castlevania Bloodlines. Hell to the yeah. I got this off of someone on Facebook. It's not someone I know. I think it was from a group. And it's autographed. By someone named Donna. Donna K. I don't know who that is. I don't care. I was just so desperate to get a copy of this game into my collection pretty early on, so this was probably back in like 2014 or 2015 when I got this, that I didn't care. That it was the cardboard box version, that it had writing on it. I just wanted the game because I had this back in the day. I bought it when it first came out back in the 90s, and I absolutely loved it. I was just kind of like, at first, I was like, Castlevania on the Genesis? Whatevs. When this one is complete, it comes with the manual and the card. Just wanted to make sure that's not like my, what game was that? My Batman and Robin. I was like, no, it's not going to work on the Genesis. How can this work on the Genesis? So I went to Funko Land, and they had a copy to try. I was like, can I play that Castlevania Bloodlines? I need to check it out real quick. And within 5 minutes, I was like, give it to me. Give it to me now. And I absolutely love it. Great effects. Great music, great gameplay, all the different characters you can choose from. We got the one with the... You got the dude with the whip, so I don't know if that's not Simon, it's like Richter? And then you got the dude with the spear. It is super fun. I absolutely love it. I need to play through it. It's been quite a while since I last played it. But I need to like just sit my ass down and play through that shit. Fantastic. I know Captain Algebra loves this one. I have a soft spot for this game. I know he doesn't like it. I know it doesn't have the greatest reputation, but this is one of those nostalgia games for me that I used to play all the time back in the day. That is Shakan the Forever Man. This is based on like an indie comic, and I always thought it was very strange that of all the licenses out there that Sega could have picked up, Shakan, the comic book that basically nobody had ever heard of, even comic book fans. Current prices of Castlevania games make me cry. I know, right? You can choose your character. Looks like a retro games. She can't. I know you don't like it. I have a soft spot for it. This was one of the first time I ever went to a Funko Land and realized that you can go there and just hang out all day and just, as long as they have a loose copy of the game in stock, you can be like, can I try it? And I remember I went there and I tried a whole bunch of games. And this one I sat there and I played for like an hour. And by the end of the night, I was like, I want to take this home and I want to play it at home. And I got a kick out of it. Yeah, it controls like poop. But for some reason, it just did it for me. Like I said, it was an earlier Genesis game. I didn't care. Nowadays, I can play it and be like, yeah, it's not great. But I just have the nostalgia heebie-jeebies for it. And it is a side-scrolling platformer beat-em-up. And you have like these potions that you can combine and upgrade your swords. You have like 2 swords that you use. You can upgrade them with different powers and all that. You can do like different flips and shit. It's, like I said, it's not great and it looks bland as hell. If there's one thing I will actively say sucks about it, the graphics are not great. But I like the music. The music is like moody, even though I'm not really a fan of like the sound that Genesis typically makes, or the music that is usually in a Genesis game. But like it just does it for me. I don't know why. It does. Next up, we have another rare game, and that is Championship Pro-Am. This is RC Pro-Am on the Genesis, and I talked about this in my Diamonds in the Rough on the Genesis video. So this is another game I knew nothing about. I did not know it existed. I was at work one day. This is like 2014, 2015, and I was putzing around on eBay at lunch, and I was just looking for. I typed in like Genesis games and stuff. I was just scrolling, and I saw this, and I was like, "Is that what I think it is?" And then I click on it, and they had a picture of the back, and it said it was developed by Rare, and I saw the picture, and I'm like, "Yep, it's RC Pro-Am on the Genesis," and I immediately hit buy it now. And it's a really good version of RC Pro-Am. I highly recommend it. If you liked it on the NES, you're going to love it on the Genesis because it is just a little bit better. Absolutely love it. So it's an isometric racing game. You're playing as remote control cars. And there's like speed boosts, and you get weapons. You can shoot rockets. There's like ice slicks and like oil slicks you can drive over to like make you slide all over the place. Sometimes you have to collect, I think you have to collect the words rare or the letters in the word rare in order to get extra points. And then you can pick up money along the way and upgrade your car. It's dirt. When I got it, it was dirt cheap. It probably still is. D23. Yeah, I wanted to. I wish did they stream that? I've always wanted to sit there and watch it, but I never actually. I just see the like the updates that they do on YouTube. Next up is a post-modern or a post. What do they call it? Aftermarket. Sorry, my brain. It ain't working tonight. Aftermarket game that a lot of people were talking about in like Facebook groups and videos on YouTube. People that I like on YouTube were talking about it, so I ended up going out and buying a copy of it. And this is the second of my backlog roulette games currently. So if you ever watch the Super Enabler Brothers podcast that I do with Jason of Corpse Flood Gaming, at the end of every episode, Jason spins a roulette wheel, throws a ball into it, whatever number it lands on. We play the game on a corresponding list of games in our backlog that we have numbered to go along with the numbers on the roulette wheel. Whatever number the ball falls on, we play that game with that number on our list. Jason didn't realize that he hadn't changed on the last episode that we did. He hadn't updated his list to eliminate the games that he'd already gotten and has played through. So he rolled the wheel again. Well, I've already beaten my game for this episode that we just did. And I was like, well, since you rolled it again and got another replacement game, I'll play the game on my list that corresponds with your new number. And that is Coffee Crisis on the Genesis. Like I said, it's an aftermarket game. It's a side-scrolling beat-em-up, kind of like Fists of Fury. Streets of Rage. And I played this briefly to make sure the cartridge worked when I brought it home. And I had to play it on my Sega CDX that I got right here. I had to play it on this because it would not work on my Retro Freak. A lot of these repros and aftermarket games do not want to work on the clone consoles. So when I wanted to play it for the backlog roulette, I had to download a ROM and put it on my Retro Freak, and it worked then. And I was not a fan. I was like playing this, and I was like, wow, this is like badly made aftermarket game, and I don't know why everyone was talking about it. We play as like two coffee shop employees, and there's like a zombie apocalypse, and you're just going around punching all the zombies, and it just, the hitboxes are terrible, the controls are bad. I did not like anything about it, not even the music. I was just like, no, I got duped. Yeah, I was not thrilled about it, so I will not be beating this one at all, because I did not want to play it. Oh, look at that shit, Cap doing it. Cap plugging the podcast. Ooh, thank you. And I think Cap just bought this game this past weekend when we went out game hunting, and we're talking about that Columns 3. Come on, look at Louis Skolnick from Revenge of the Nerds sitting right there. If you play Columns, you've played them all. It is a ripoff of Tetris, but it involves jewels, matching up colored jewels. This one just has like a big multiplayer component compared to the other ones. I don't even know where the hell Columns 2 is. I know Columns 1 exists because that was one of the like the first generation Genesis games. And then out of nowhere, Vic Takai releases Part 3. Where's Part 2? Thanks for the reminder. Just doing my part. I'm an enabler. Come on. I like playing Columns. I don't mind it. I would rather play like Puyo Puyo or just straight up Tetris or something like that. I would definitely rather play Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo on the PlayStation 1. But like for like a gem matching game, it's not bad. But like Cap was saying in the car while we're driving around looking for games, you play it for about 10 minutes and you're basically done. There's really nothing to it. So I can't complain. I got it for like $5. I need to get a protector for this. But we got Comic Zone, and this is a side-scrolling beat-em-up. And the cool thing about this is that the whole game is set up like a comic book, where you're in a panel, you fight the enemies in that panel, and then you move on to the next panel, and you'll actually see your character like grab the edge of the panel and use it to like swing around to get into the next one. And if you have to go down to the next panel, you jump down. It's kind of cool. Excuse me. It's kind of cool the way it works when I got the hiccups all of a sudden. Shit. When enemies show up, you'll see like a hand show up with like a pencil and it'll draw them in and stuff like that. It's really cool the way it's done. It's creative. It's hard as hell though. Holy crap. As a beat 'em up, it's like almost like unfair at times, I want to say. But like I think it gets by on the creativity factor. I don't know if this was one of the games that was like made in America and not ported over from Japan, because if this was one that was ported over from Japan, I'm guaranteeing you that the Japanese version of it is way easier than the version that we got, because they would always port them over and like up the difficulty for some reason for us. Were they punishing us for something? I don't know. But it's just really cool to watch and play, but it's like I said, it will frustrate the hell out of you, but it's pretty neat. I don't have the bonus CD that this came with because I got this off the interwebs long after its release. It's stupid hard, yeah. Yeah, they tear the border. Yeah, that's really cool the way it works. Cap, I gotta do it. Where's that no death run, bitch? Contra Hardcore. Okay, so Treasure is a bunch of ex-Konami employees that splintered off from Konami, created their own company, and started making games. And then when they released Gunstar Heroes, which was super creative and used the Genesis hardware in really cool ways, Konami was like, "Yo, fuck that. We're gonna out Treasure them with our people that are left from our in our programming division." And they are trying their hardest in this game to out Treasure every chance they could possibly get, and it is pretty awesome. Sure, the game is essentially another boss rush, type of game. It's like a short little level you run through, but you're just always fighting some kind of a big-ass boss that has weird patterns and shit. And it is really tough. Cap makes this game look easy as shit, but man, I ain't Cap. But doesn't mean I don't love it. It is a fun-ass game, but it takes like practice and patience to memorize everything about it. And my brain don't work like that. Resident Evil 0, my dick. But it is super awesome. It doesn't really feel like your typical Contra game because of like the boss rushiness of it. But I'm not complaining because it is super fun. And like I said, it's full of awesome effects, awesome music. You have like 4 different characters you can choose from. I absolutely love it. Hard as balls, though. Now we got the Crew Ball. I talked about this in my 31 Days of Licensed Games series that I did back in January. I talked about this one when it came to a game based on a band or like a music licensed game. And this is Motley Crue, the pinball game. And multiple endings, yeah. I will never see the good one. So yeah, this is digital pinball with Motley Crue. You have Dr. Feelgood up there. And all the music in the game are like really crappy, but really still kind of catchy chiptune versions of the songs off of the Dr. Feelgood album by Motley Crue. And the tables are actually based off of stuff from the songs. It is really fun. I absolutely loved this. I played this at my buddy Charlie's house. I don't remember if he was a huge Motley Crue fan or not, but he had this game. So I have to assume that he was. Because I was not a Motley Crue fan back in the day. But I had a blast playing this, and I think this is like one of the reasons why, like outside of Revenge of the Gator, one of the things that got me really, really, really interested in video game pinball. was this, because this was just super fun. It was a combination probably of this, Pinbot, and Revenge of the Gator on the Game Boy. But it's a super fun pinball game. I highly recommend it. Now we have Cyborg Justice. I remember watching Captain Algebra stream this, and it looked pretty fun. So when I saw it at my local game store, Video Games Then and Now, for like $15, I was like, yeah, I'll take it. And it's a beat 'em up, and I think if this is the one I'm thinking of, it's the one where you can swap out parts of your robot, and it's like a robot fighting game, a one-on-one fighting game. And you can swap out parts of the robot. You can put new arms on, a new torso, new legs kind of thing, and constantly upgrade your robot. And it looked really, really fun. And I played it for a little while when I first got my copy to make sure it worked. And I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. Yeah, build 216 different cyborgs, combine bodies, legs, and arm weapons for murderous power. It's a kid's game, and they're using the word murderous on the back. Sure. Battle with brutal, acrobatic somersaults, flying kicks, tackles, and body slams. And in head-to-head mode, settle who's the dominator in a single duel to the death. It looked pretty fun, so I had to get it. And sure, why not? What does that say? Oh, over 216 killer cyborgs. Oh! So many good games. Yeah, it was better. I remember seeing it a lot back in the day, like especially like at Funkoland. I remember always seeing it and being like, eh. And I don't think I had it. I honestly don't think I had it back in the day. I think the first time I actually owned a copy was after I watched you stream it. This is another one I don't remember having back in the day, but that's Decap Attack. I think this is one of your games. Yeah, you have like a pixel character of this in your background, don't you, Cap? Yeah, it's a side-scrolling platformer, and I picked this up not too long ago. It was a couple of like classic Genesis games that I realized I didn't have in my collection. It was this and Kid Chameleon, and I ended up finding them at Video Games Then and Now, like within a month of each other. And I was like, yeah, sure, why not? I've always wanted them, never actually had them. But yeah, you play as like this headless corpse, like a mummy, but it has a face on the torso, which I always thought was super creepy. Yeah, you can see it on the cover. And you throw your head as a weapon? Sure, why not? But yeah, side-scrolling platformer. Why not? I keep on saying why not, because why not? Yeah, I don't know much about it because I haven't spent a lot of time playing it, so I can't really talk to its strengths and weaknesses, but it looked fun. This game I picked up last month when Captain Algebra, Rocket Sauce, and Tiger Chainsaw and I went shopping for games throughout Wisconsin. And we found this at Game Trade, I think, and it didn't have a manual. But just like with Burning Force, I have never actually seen this in person at a store, so I was kind of like, when's the next time I'm going to see this? Might as well just get it, because it's here, and I want to play it. So we're talking Devilish, The Next Possession. This is actually Devilish 2. The first game is a Game Gear game, which I talked about in one of my shorts not too long ago. Actually, it was last week. And it's kind of like playing Breakout. It is like playing Breakout. Who am I kidding? It is Breakout, but it's really cool. The really cool thing about it is it's an auto-scrolling game. So instead of like Breakout, where it's like you're in a static screen, it's like a screen. You're not going anywhere through that, past it. You have like a bunch of blocks you have to break, and you have your little paddle at the bottom, and there's a ball bouncing around that you got to bounce back at those blocks to break them. The thing is, the screen is constantly moving. So if there are blocks in your way, you need to break them in order to pass, or you're going to die. And then the game will actually start scrolling to the left or to the right. And now you're bouncing you're bouncing this ball around to the left and the right, trying to get all these blocks out of the way so you can progress. And then there's enemies running around that you have to kill. And it gets really hectic because for a while that screen will start moving a little bit faster. And then also there's more balls. You get power-ups and stuff like that for your paddles. Sometimes you'll make them wider and smaller, kind of like an Arkanoid. And there's bosses that you have to fight. You can kind of see it on the back, the bottom there. There's like a boss that you end up fighting. It sounds weird. It's actually super fun. Like I said, I had picked up the Game Gear game years ago from the exchange near me on a whim because it was the only box Game Gear game they had, and it was dirt cheap. And I thought it was a pinball game. And then when I got it home and I played it, I was like, oh, not what I thought. Pleasantly surprised. So when I found out there was a sequel on the Genesis, I had to have it. So, highly recommend this one. It is super fun. Then we have licensed game. We have Dick Tracy. This is based on the movie that came out like in 1990 or whatever it was, which is, I think it's an okay movie. It's not the greatest, but it's fun. But the game is definitely better than the movie because it's either you do two things. It's like side-scrolling. Well, it is one thing. It's a side-scrolling like shoot, like a run and gun kind of, but it's really slow. It's weird. Part of those side-scrolling stages is you're just walking along the sidewalk, and then enemies will come at you and you shoot them. Okay, you duck, you duck to avoid their shots. You shoot them, they're dead. There's also guys running around in the background on the other side of the street, and then you can hold down, I think it's the C button, and then you'll Tommy gun across the road to kill them. So you're like just randomly like throwing bullets all over the walls. And it's really, really fun. There's some parts where you're like on the side of a car and you're shooting other cars. There's some target practice stages. It is super fun. It is, I think, better than the movie it's based on. This is like a licensed game done right. I wished I found a way to talk about this in my 31 Days of Licensed Games videos, but I just found other games that I thought were a little bit better than this, but I really wanted to include this, but I couldn't. It gets tough toward the end, yeah, but it is super fun. Okay, so now we got DJ Boy, and the funny thing about this is I used to do a show on YouTube with a buddy of mine named Josh, and it was called Toasty. It was like a talk show where we talked about geek stuff, and we started to branch out instead of just sitting on my couch talking about like movies and video games and anime and stuff like that, and movies. That we were going to go out into our neighborhood and like start interviewing owners of like geeky businesses. So there's a barcade right down the street from me, and we wanted to interview the owner, this guy named Zespi of Logan Arcade, and he had an arcade game called Bebop and the Beat Kids or something like that. It's a sequel to DJ Boy, and it actually has like it's a beat 'em up. Like this is. It's a beat 'em up. It's like all hip-hop themed. But there's like, for the music in the game, it's actual like hip-hop songs that were made specifically for the game. And they are super catchy. And it makes playing it so much fun. Because you end up like pressing the buttons to the beat unintentionally. And it was super fun. I had a great time playing it. And then I remember I was like, wait a minute, this is the follow-up to DJ Boy. And DJ Boy is on the Genesis. And the thing about DJ Boy is it's a game where you're like a kid on roller skates going through the park, and all these people are just always trying to trip you up and beat your ass. So you turn around and whoop their ass in return. And I was like, I need to have it. I need to have it right now. So I remember I came home from doing the interview at the arcade and went online, found a copy of DJ Boy, ordered it off of eBay. And when it showed up, I was like, yes, let's get this done. I'm going to play this all night. And I played it for about 15 minutes, and I was like, I made a mistake. It's not that good. It sucks when compared to the arcade versions. It's just kind of like a half-assed port of an arcade game. I mean, it's cool for, like I said, for about 15 minutes, and they're just kind of like, the controls are kind of crappy. But it's not, like, terrible, but it's just not good. It's worth having. I know Cap's going to have to get it because, Genesis game. What's up, Oscillo? How's it going? The NES version of Dick Tracy, I think, is a steaming pile of poopy. The Master System, I think, is almost exactly like the Genesis game, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong. DJ Boy like Adventure Island. I have this because it came in a lot. I don't know if I'm going to keep it, but I might because of what it is. It's a sports game. I don't have many sports games, but I might keep it just because it's Double Dribble, the playoff edition. It came in a lot, and I was not opposed. I think I got this at the same time I got Champion Pro-Am. I think it came with it. And the reason I wanted to keep this is, oh my god, it's probably Jason from Corpse Flood texting me a bunch of memes or something. Let me turn the volume off on my phone. Double Dribble was a game that I used to play all the time on the NES. It's a basketball game by Konami, and it's really arcadey, like Blades of Steel, and I absolutely loved it. So when I saw that this was going to show up with my copy of, I do believe it was Champion Pro-Am, I was not opposed. I was like, oh, okay, fine. There's a Genesis version of Double Dribble. Sure, why not? And if you look at it, it looks kind of like an upgraded version of the NES game. The players are a little bit bigger. The court's a little bit more zoomed in. Sure, why not? And I played it for like 5 minutes when it first showed up, and I was like, yeah, it's all right. It's a basketball game. It's a little arcadey. Why not? It's better than Arch Rivals. But I haven't really played it since, so I really can't comment on it. But I keep it because of Double Dribble on the NES, which I still need to get a copy of. I have Blades of Steel. I need to get Double Dribble. And my ass is going numb! And my throat is going dry. Need to try the arcade version of that game. What's the arcade one called again? Talking about DJ Boy? DJ Boy itself is an arcade game. The sequel... Hang on a second. Let me look it up for you, because the name is weird. It's like B-Boy and the Rap Gang or something like that. I have to look it up. It's called B-Rap Boys. B.Rap Boys. And like I said, look it up on YouTube. Look up some footage. Man, the songs that they play in that game are so cool. I'm not a big rap fan, but I was like playing it in the... And I think they still have it at the arcade over here. Cap, next time you come to visit, we should go to the barcade and check it out. That I was sitting there going like, I'm not a big rap fan, but Jesus, I want this soundtrack. This is fun as hell. Another RPG, we've got Dungeons and Dragons, Warriors of the Eternal Sun. I had been wanting this game for the longest time because, like, over the past, like, year, I've been getting back into Dungeons and Dragons, like the actual tabletop game, but, like, I've always had an interest in the license. Back in, like, 2007 and 2008, I was playing D&D with a bunch of friends, and I wanted to get a copy of this because I like the license, like I said. And it ends up being, like, another Ultima-style RPG, where it's, like, real old school. It's, like, a bunch of text, and you got, like, the windows when you're in the dungeons, and there's an overworld and all that, and it's another game that has a very high difficulty curve, if I remember correctly. The manual isn't, like... The manual's pretty thick for a Sega game, from like a Genesis game by Sega. It's not quite as thick as one of those RPGs by Electronic Arts, but like it's got a learning curve, and I'm not opposed to it. But I do need to I really need to sit down and just start busting out some of these RPGs and just getting it over with and playing some of these things. I keep buying them with the intent to play them, but I never play them. Here's another game by Treasure. That's Dynamite Heady. I picked this up at my local exchange. I remember this game always eluded me. Like, I always kind of wanted it because it's Treasure. Never had it back in the day. And then I hear that it's, like, been censored over here. Or they trimmed some stuff out of the American version compared to the Japanese version. So I was like, do I want the American version? Or do I just get, like, a repro of the Japanese one? Because I've seen repros of the Japanese one. I might get it also just because. But... I found this, and I always thought it was kind of expensive. I always assumed it was going to be expensive because of that whole it's been censored thing. And usually those are the games that people want, are the ones that have been like altered in some way. So, go to my local exchange, and they were selling this like for $30. And I was like, what? And it's complete and everything. It's a little banged up, which is probably why it's cheap. There's some of the plastic up here has been like wrinkled and torn a little bit. But it's a side-scrolling platformer that is just filled with crazy effects that you normally don't think the Genesis would be able to pull off, but it does it, and it looks fantastic while it's doing it. And the music is super catchy, and the main character is real charming. I like it a lot. Even got a port to the Game Gear of all frickin' consoles. Can't go wrong with Treasure. NBA Jam. I love NBA Jam. They made our version harder. Is that what it is? The Japanese one is easy? Okay. Yeah, I remember there was something done to it. I could have sworn that there was like a level that was cut out of it or something. I remember reading or hearing something about that, but I could be wrong. Here's another repro that I got from that Etsy shop, something arcade, like Arcade Legacy, Retro Arcade, Retro. I don't remember. I wish they put their name on here in some way, but there isn't. But we got, it's another horizontally scrolling shmup, and it's called Eliminate Down. And I had seen pictures of this in magazines and stuff, and I always thought it looked interesting, but it just never came out over here. And it is a pretty fantastic horizontally scrolling shmup. It has a lot of really cool effects, music, power-ups. The graphics are actually kind of fantastic for a Genesis game. But oh no, I didn't get this from them. I got this from... I got this from Toysaurus Games on Instagram. My buddy Eric Koch. I brought him up a couple times. I know because when I looked at the cartridge, I was like, oh no, that's an Eric thing. So, number one, all the games that I was getting from that Etsy shop always came with a manual. That's one reason why I was like, wait a minute, this doesn't have a manual? Did I get this? But then I look at the cartridge. Eric always does cool things with his carts when you get something from him. This one has been painted to look like a star field, like it's a nebula. That is freaking awesome. He does fantastic work. I highly recommend if you're looking for some repros for the Genesis and the Master System to go and talk to him on Instagram. Toy_Saurus_games. And yeah, he was selling like his edition of this, and I had to pick it up. So super awesome, horizontally scrolling shmup. I highly recommend it. Here's another first generation Genesis game. We've got eSWAT, City Under Siege. I do believe this also came out on the Master System. I need to check that out. But this is a horizontally scrolling, like, run and gun kind of. It reminds me a little bit of Rolling Thunder. Because of the way you can jump up in the air and like land on a platform above and all that kind of stuff. But you play as like a futuristic beat cop, and then eventually you can get like a big robot suit and stuff, and you're just shooting bad guys, because that's what you do in video games, just shoot nothing but bad guys. And it's pretty fun. It's a little basic, because like I said, it's a first generation Genesis game, but it's one of those games that I'd always wanted, and then I found it at my local retro store, so I had to pick it up. They cut out some text in the first fight with the bear, but I don't know what else was cut. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I could be wrong. I just remember like hearing something was done to the game, and if it's what you were saying, like I'm pretty sure it's what you were saying, like it was just made harder. Oh, this game! Everybody loves this game. This is the best game on the Genesis as far as everybody's concerned. Nobody says that. It's Eternal Champions. So, I am a huge fighting game fan. I love fighting games. Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, any of the SNK fighting games. Even Time Killers I had a soft spot for in the arcade. I used to play that all the time. So when this came out on the Genesis, and it was being hyped massively by Sega, because this is like Sega's internally created one-on-one fighting game to compete with Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter and all that shit. And like they even created the activator controller, which is like that octagon of light sensors that you put on the floor, and you like punch through it or you kick through the light beams to make the character do the same thing in the game, and it didn't work. All for this game, because this was going to be like the Super Nintendo killer. Like who's going to want a Super Nintendo when you've got Eternal Champions? And then everyone bought the game and was like, the fuck is this? This game runs so slow, and the controls are so delayed, and it's clunky, and the music sucks, and the graphics are ugly, and it's just not a good game. I like I said, I love fighting games, but Jesus, holy crap! It is cool because there are fatalities. They are hard to pull off because it's always about where the character that you're gonna your opponent has to be standing in a specific spot with a specific amount of health left, and you have to kick him or punch him or whatever in a specific direction to get the fatality to happen, and it's always like an environmental kill. There's like one where you kick a character, if you're on the prehistoric stage, and you kick them really close to the right side of the stage. When they land, a big dinosaur head will come out and eat them and chomp on them, and you'll see blood. Or you knock someone into a fan in the background, or you knock somebody into like an electrified like marquee sign or something like that. And it's always something stupid. The fact that they're there is cool. Just getting them to actually happen, not cool. Yeah, this game disappointed the hell out of me. I was like, within playing this for an hour, it was like one of those things where I was starting to play it and I was like, wow, this is super awesome. And then like the more I played it, the more I was like, no, that kind of sucks. No, that kind of sucks too. And within an hour, I was just like, yeah, I wasted my money. I should have rented it. Yeah, it's not cool. I'm not a fan of it at all. Although my copy is completely complete. It comes with the manual and the activator ad. Yeah, that thing did not work. I remember they were selling it. I picked this up at Best Buy, and they had the activator at Best Buy, and they had a demo of it, and everybody would like go, and like nothing would happen in the game. They'd be like, yeah, no, I'm not buying it. Yeah, it's terrible. The Sega CD game, on the other hand, holy shit, is that awesome. They learn from their mistakes with part 2. Yeah, I love the, like, a friend of mine back in the day, I bought the Sega CD version, and man, we were just like, I hope this doesn't suck like the Genesis one does, because the game actually got great reviews in the magazines of the day on the Sega CD, and when I brought it home, man, we played that shit all night. It is way faster, the controls are way better, the graphics and the music, obviously it's on a CD, are way better. Tons of fatalities, all these characters you can unlock. The Senator is awesome. Holy shit. Screw the Genesis version, just get the Sega CD one. Yeah, Shaq Fu. I hate Shaq Fu on the Genesis. The Super Nintendo one is actually not too bad. It's still a bad game, but it's not as bad as the Genesis one. Here we have X Mutants. I think this was released in to capitalize on the X-Men game that came out on the Genesis, the first one, because that became so popular. They're like, oh, get something out there that sounds exactly like it. That's about superheroes. I do believe this is based off of another comic book. I think this was like an Image comic or something. I can't remember. Maybe it was a Marvel comic. I don't know. But not nearly as good. It's a side-scrolling platformer, and it's not the greatest. I just remember the controls being very wonky, but I wanted it because I used to rent this and play it with my brother all the time, and because we loved comic book stuff, so we absolutely had to have it. But we didn't actually want to buy it, so like if there was nothing in there to rent that we'd already... The video game store that we would go to rent games for was the one that I ended up working at in the mid-90s. If all the good stuff was gone, we would just rent this, because we knew how it played, we knew it was okay, and we didn't hate it. We're like, okay, I don't have a problem renting that and playing it again. Picked this up at Gen Con. It doesn't have a manual. I was kind of sad about it. But I picked this up at Gen Con for like $10, and to find our like video games, like especially Genesis games in the case at Gen Con of all places, is kind of strange. But here's another Electronic Arts RPG, Fairy Tale Adventure. I knew nothing about this, but here's another Ultima style, old school RPG with the overworld and the dungeons and all that stuff. I hear this one is not the greatest, but like I said, it was dirt cheap, so I picked it up. And like I said, I only play these games usually to test them out when I first get them home, to make sure they work. It worked. Haven't put any time into it, so I really can't comment. But Electronic Arts seem to like be making nothing but these types of games for like the first couple of years of developing on the Genesis. Okay, here's another repro. So it's actually a hack of a game called Combat Cars on the Genesis, and I wanted to get it because the hack is actually made... The people who made the hack are Russian, and they turned it into a licensed game. And I like the movie that it's licensed, not technically licensed, it's unlicensed from, illegally licensed. I got this from that, what is it called? Retro Arcade or whatever it was. So it's Fast 5. I'm a fan of the Fast and Furious movies. I understand they're stupid. I am fully aware how dumb they are. They're just a lot of fun to watch, at least in my case. So when I saw that there was a Fast 5 game, I was like, oh shit, yes. Give it to me. Give it to me right now. And you get to choose between a whole bunch of the characters from the movie, or the movies, and you race in like these top-down... I'm trying to explain what it's like. There's I can't remember the name of any of the games, but there's the ones where you're racing and you're looking. It's like you're looking straight down at the arcade at the track, and you'll get like these arrow like flashes on the screen and tell you, oh, there's a left turn coming up, and then you turn, and then oh, there's a corkscrew coming up or like a U-turn coming up, and you have to do a U-turn when you get there. It's not good at all. It like is impossible to play. I don't know if Combat Cars is as tough as this is, but I could not even beat the first race. But you can choose between Dominic and Brian and Mia and Ludacris and Tyrese and all that. And I just wanted it because it's a Fast 5 game. It's not good at all. It's a terrible... Like, whoever hacked this, they must have just done something to it to make it terrible. I need to try Combat Cars to see if it's as tough as this is, but Jesus... I want that. That is basically in my collection because it's kind of funny to me. Here's a... I think this is an RPG. I think this is an action RPG, but Fatal Labyrinth. I haven't played this too much. A friend of mine... I had a friend named Brian back in the day who used to play this. I remember I walked in on him playing it a couple times when I went to visit him and his girlfriend. Now it's his wife. But it looks like a basic action RPG. Haven't really put any time into this, but I got this pretty early on in my collecting. I do believe this is also a first-generation Genesis game. You can tell because of the grid pattern in the background. But, yeah, sure, I got this dirt cheap, which is why it's in my collection. Next up is another Electronic Arts game, but this is by Psygnosis, which is why I bought it. And Cap, Fatal Labyrinth, yeah, it looks okay. Cap, here's another one of those really small, thin Electronic Arts cases like the Immortal. And that's Fatal Rewind. This one's got a real skinny one. This is skinnier than your standard Genesis case. And the thing about this is it's a port of a Commodore 64 game or an Amiga game, I think. And you're like in a game show, kind of like the Running Man, but you're like in this little robot. Where the whole idea is to survive. Yeah, that's what comes inside these things, where just the cartridge and the manual just like sitting in here, flopping around. There's nothing holding them in place at all. Thanks, Electronic Arts. But from what I understand, the Amiga game or Commodore game or whatever is actually really good, but the port kind of suffers a little bit, like in the control department. But it still looks kind of cool. It's kind of like a platformer, but like the whole plot is like you're in this like violent game show, like the Running Man, and the whole idea is to just like survive and kill everything that's trying to kill you. It's not that bad. And then we have Final Zone. I talked about part 2 in my PC Engine game or stream a couple of weeks ago. I picked this one up on a whim on, was it eBay? I think I got this on eBay. Yeah, early on in collecting because I was like, "Ooh, renovation game," and it's cheap because renovation games I always wanted them all back in the day, but I never was able to get them. But this one is an isometric mech game, and it's basically shoot all the bad guys, move on to the next stage kind of thing. It's okay. The graphics are fine. The controls are fine. The music is fine. It's just kind of like the same thing like over and over again, so it kind of gets tiresome. It's worth playing part 2 though because they change it up and they turn it into a Contra style game in part 2, but it has some of the absolute worst voice acting in a game ever, and it's like so funny. It's like worth just suffering. My throat's going crazy again. It's worth suffering through some of the crap in that game just to get to the next cutscene so you can like get another chuckle because of how bad the voice acting is. Next up we have Flashback, Quest for Identity. This is one of my all-time favorite games on the Genesis. This was the original version of this game. I don't think it came out on any PC before the Genesis. I think it originally came out on the Genesis. 12 meg cartridge. Remember when that was like actually like a thing that you would use to sell a game? So what it is it's kind of like playing Out of This World or Prince of Persia. It's like one of those cinematic platformers, but it's all sci-fi themed. Your character wakes up in like this weird jungle with no memory, and he has like a little like hologram of himself saying like, "Hey, you need to get off this planet. You need to go and find this dude." And it's like you trying to unravel what happened to you. And it is super fun. I absolutely love it. It controls like a dream. The gameplay is super fun. The story's interesting. It does get a little wacky toward the end. But all the different environments that you go into and the backtracking and all that, it is so much fun. I absolutely love it. To the point where I actually own this for multiple consoles. I absolutely love it. I have it for the Genesis. I have it for the 3DO. The 3DO is probably the best version. I almost bought this for the Super Nintendo. I have it for the Switch. I absolutely love it. Pick it up if you haven't already. It is the best. And the last game I'm going to talk about tonight is also the last game in the Fs that I own. That is Forgotten Worlds. I've talked about this a couple times when I was talking about what was it? Double Trouble. What was that game called? Battlemania 2, the troubleshooter vintage. Either this is a ripoff of that or that is a ripoff of this. But it's a horizontally, sometimes vertically scrolling shmup where you're playing as these like two soldiers who float. And you can shoot in any direction as long as you can turn to face in any direction as you're floating around to shoot bad guys. And there's really not much more to it. But it is super fun. Look at that boss fight right there. That is awesome and epic. But I actually like it. I don't know if this is based... I don't think this is based on an arcade game. I think this is just an original game for the Genesis. But it is one of the first-generation games, obviously, because of the format of the cover. But it's super fun. I picked this up randomly at my... I think I got this at Video Games Then and... Not Video Games Then and Now. People Play Games before they shut down. And I was super thrilled. I got this for like $15-20, so I was really thrilled. And I absolutely love it. It is super fun. I need to sit down and play this again. I might play this tonight. Hell yeah. So there you have it. That is the first part of my Genesis collection done. My God, I need to go and rest. My throat is going crazy. My eyes are watering. My nose is running. All the dust from these games. My computer definitely needs a rest. I don't know what's going on with this damn thing. Flashbacks like a sci-fi hangover. Yeah. Didn't see Blade Runner until a couple of years ago. Oh, Blade Runner. Yeah, there's the cool thing about Flashback, it is a little bit cyberpunk too. There's actually a scene in that, there's a section in that game where you're on like a game show like The Running Man, and it is really fun. The last stage, though, will drive you nuts. But it's super awesome. Part 1, yeah. 2 hours, and it's just the first part. And this is the least amount of games I'll be talking about in these streams, because this was like a shelf and a half. Now I got two videos where it's going to be 2 completely full shelves, so less porn will make your computer run better. There ain't no porn on this bitch, man. That's for my laptop. Okay, so thank you everybody for coming tonight. I will be back next Thursday at 8:30 p.m. Central for part 2 of this series. And tomorrow is going to be another busy day for this channel, because in the morning, early afternoon, I'm going to release a new short. You have to stick around to see what that one's going to be all about. And then tomorrow night is going to be my monthly pickup live stream. So there's another live stream happening tomorrow night, 8:30 p.m. Central. Everything that I picked up in the month of September, everything that I picked up while out game hunting throughout Wisconsin with Captain Algebra and TJ Kitsune and Rocket Sauce, plus all the movies that I picked up this month. And there's a lot of really cool movies I've got on my list right here. And I need to watch a couple of these this weekend. Ugh, my throat. Ugh. So yeah, like I said, stick around tomorrow. 2 new things happening tomorrow on the channel. Like I said, new short, new live stream about my monthly pickups. So come back for that. Come back next Thursday for another episode of the Genesis collection. And I'll talk to you all later. Have a good night. Daddy needs a glass of water. Stay safe, everybody. I will talk to you later. Hopefully I'll see you tomorrow. Good night.